Welcome to The Brown Box, a podcast that celebrates the lives of brown women here in Singapore. Today's guest is Anbarasi Boopal, known to most simply as Anbu, a dedicated animal rights activist. Anbu is co-CEO of Acres, Singapore's beloved wildlife rescue centre. But as I discovered, her story goes far beyond her remarkable work with animals. Our conversation will reveal that this woman, who giggles at the antics of turtles, who seems as soft as cotton, has a life forged from steel. Hers is a story of resilience in the face of abuse, of trauma turned to purpose. But most importantly, it's the story of brown women, of sisters coming together and standing in an unshakable circle of solidarity. It's my favorite kind of story, one that celebrates the small things, the texture of village life, the rhythm of the old ways, and the quiet truth that yesterday's wisdom is still relevant in today's world. So join me as we unpack Anbu's story right here on The Brown Box. I'm at Choa Chu Kang, where the city's concrete edges blur to green. The Acre sign is painted in an appealing childlike way on the side of a building wall. Anbu makes me coffee. I watch a wild monkey through the window. It swings lazily through the branches, a quiet reminder that this is also his territory. We sip coffee, we chat. Anbu's voice is soft, but it carries weight. She speaks with the kind of wisdom that comes from living a life of purpose. Later, as we walk the grounds, a myna will perch on her shoulder like an old friend, giving her a quick peck to get her attention. Chickens will follow her path, clucking with sounds suspiciously like gossip. It's hard to imagine that one of Singapore's loudest voices for animals, for creatures who can't speak for themselves, was once called Potato. But as I tell her story, Anbu will teach me that not being loud doesn't mean not being heard.
Potato. That is something that my sisters would call me when I was young. I was this person who doesn't move much. I was quiet and I was this short girl. So my sisters, they were taller than me. So they would always like, I can't see the arms and legs. You're just a little potato. I had great ways of expressing, and also my sisters. So we had an environment where we were allowed to express ourselves however we want, whether it's art or craft. And I did not realize that when I was young, but now as an adult, when I look back at how my childhood was, that is something I really cherish, and also grateful to the parents, right? Because I was growing up in a village. So it's not like people had access to parenting tips and how to take care of children and stuff like that. But they had this innate thing in them for them to allow us that freedom to express the way we want. For example, me and my sister, we used to walk back from the school. That's 2 kilometers walk along a lake. It's a beautiful lake where we lived. And we would collect like trash from the roadside. I'm talking about broken glass bangles, candy wrappers, that kind of stuff, anything that's shiny. So we would bring back and we would do craft and make it into a card for our parents. And they cherished it. It was a big thing for us to be able to do this without being judged. And they always encouraged us. So I think that is one big part that I remember from the childhood. I was the youngest, but I was the most mature one in the group. I think I was like a whistleblower in the group. So they would not let me see the crimes that the group commits. So I did feel like that streak of personality was already there, where you can tell things which are right and wrong. Like the simple games that we play, they know that I will try to be very fair and just. So I will be the substitute in these kind of games, police and thief kind of game. I would always be the first one to go and confess when something goes wrong to the parents. So that's definitely... It's well hated among the kids group, right? Like, why does she have to go and talk to us?
She was born an advocate, the one who always felt a strong sense of right and wrong. I wasn't that little girl as far as I remember. I was too worried about being left out, being judged. Where did this openness, this strength to speak her mind come from?
I think this has something to do with how we were treated when we make a mistake. I remember this incident when me and my sister, we were sent to go and grind wheat flour. So there's a mill, we bring the wheat. And so this mill is fueled by rice husk, which is burnt. And so there's always ash, and insects will go to the warm ash. So we were bringing back the flour from the mill, and we saw that there was a big beetle that was coming out of the flour, and we got spooked, and we dropped the thing to wait for the beetle to come out, and we lost a bit of flour on the ground. And we brought home, and my mom was quick to tell us that this doesn't look like the original amount. It looks light, and we kept quiet because we were worried that my mom would scold. And our dog, who is black in color, then turns up a few minutes later covered in flour, right? So my mom did not see the dog, but we saw that our dog is going to expose us. So we decided to go up front and confess that, okay, we did lose a lot of flour. And the first thing my mom did was she laughed. And it is, I think, one point where you learn that it's okay, as long as we just speak the truth, to make mistakes. I have 2 older sisters, yes. And until today, we are quite close to each other. They are like good friends. And I just spoke to them before coming for this session.
I'm strangely flattered that Anbu has told her sisters about me and this recording. Even though I know she speaks to them every day, in an odd way, I now feel a part of that circle of female support. What I'm doing here is relevant. I ask Anbu about her parents.
My mom she is this very resilient, strong, independent woman. That's the image I have of her. And my dad is this very interesting individual, multi-talented, and a very free-spirited person. And both of them are well-educated. But like my mom came from a very difficult family where she has to earn, she was the sole breadwinner for the family. And I think she was someone who didn't want to get married for a long time and then ended up having to get married. And my dad was this free-spirited person who is very popular in the village, in the town. And he studied in a boarding school and all that. So he speaks many languages. And he also wanted to be free-spirited at some point. I think somehow they ended up together, right? I think it has definitely shaped who we are now.
As Anbu talks about her parents, I remember my parents' wedding photos, especially my mother's face. So pretty, shy, and young. I ask Anbu if she remembers her parents' wedding photos.
Yes, I do. And I also remember that my mom used to say that I did not have a good look at your dad's face because he was very tall. And she also recounted how at her own wedding, because she's a sole breadwinner, she runs around. She used to use the word that I'm like the son in the family. She was saying that at her wedding, because those days weddings are done at homes, and in the morning there was no coffee, so she had to run to the shop where they grind coffee and buy coffee powder for her own wedding. And I still remember that today too. It just like she does her own show. She takes responsibility. She showed more than sometimes what she can, I think. But because she has that sense of integrity that, okay, this is my show, I need to put this up well. And quite independent in that sense. So my mom is from Tanjavur and my dad is from Dindivanam. I was born and brought up in Chengalpattu and Kanchipuram most of the time. And Kanchipuram is a town. It's very busy. It's bustling with a lot of things like tourism, temples, silk, flowers. It's a very happening little town. When we went to temples area, I just loved the energy. So my mom and I would just spend our evenings at the temple after her work. She was working. And after my school, we would go to the temple and sit down to have our dinner before going home. It's a space and the energy. When you enter, I think Kanchipuram has some beautiful temples. If I can just close my eyes and remember, I can literally smell the grass that is outside the temple where you walk to go around the 3 cycles, right? And it's just the energy in the space. I think respect to a lot of parameters that they took into account when they built the temples many thousand years ago sometimes. And there's a reason to it, I think, and it has an effect on you. So I don't really go deeper into exactly worshipping this god, this goddess, but it's just an ambience that I love. So until today, when I go back to India, I always try to visit. My favorite one was Egambraswara temple. And there's another Kailasanatha temple outside Kanchipuram.
I was always very drawn to temples in a way that was odd for a young girl from a strict Christian family. Maybe it was rebellion. Maybe it was this energy that Anbu speaks of. I ask her what else binds her to her ancestral home.
So Tamil is my mother tongue, and I feel that Tamil is a very rich language. A lot of words to express different emotions and feelings. When you grow up, there are terms that you remember and the moments that you remember, and you can't find an equivalent in another language, in my experience. There is this gooseberry pickle, and I think the word for it is tuvarpu. So it's a flavor, it's a taste. And it was very difficult for me to find an equivalent for it. This is something very close to my heart because at home we make the gooseberry nellikai pickle at home and I love it. So I wanted to publish that recipe and share the joy, and I couldn't find the equivalent for it. But also other things that are a bit silly, but the words like eruma madu, which is buffalo, right? That is something I think every other colleague at my workplace who don't speak Tamil, they know this word because I use it all the time. So whether it is an endearing thing when I'm addressing a dog or a pigeon, I still use it. It's because it's very close to my heart. When I was growing up, my mom and dad would call us, it's not a vulgar word, it's just an animal's name, right? So when we do something where we are very slow or lazy, they call us eruma madu because buffaloes can be a bit slower than cows. But also when they want to call us in an endearing way, they will like, chinna eruma is like the little buffalo, right? So it is used for both sides where it depends on how you put it. So that's something you cannot replicate in English, right? Like, can I find a equivalent word to use? And it still comes out when I feel frustrated. I just roll the R in the mud and say Yiruma madu. But when there's a dog who I want to pet, then oh, you need to Yiruma madu. It's something that I think many people who grew up in Tamil households would know the Yiruma madu word.
As quite a lazy child who always had my head stuck in a book, I've had that word thrown at me as well. Affectionately, yes, but also with the frustrated roll of the R that Anbu talks about. But I want to talk more about Kanchipuram, the home of the Kanjivaram sari or Pattu sari, silk sari.
So in Kanchipuram, most households will have the weaving setup. Silk is a big part of the culture. I love sari and I love wearing good things. And just like many young girls, even before I'm supposed to wear sari, I was fascinated with wearing sari. Like every piece of towel becomes a sari. So I was very looking forward to when I could wear half sari and sari. But when the time came, I learned also about my deep-set love for the animals and started questioning about where this comes from, where that comes from. Same thing for the pattu sari, for silk saris, because silk comes basically killing the silkworms. They are cocoons and they don't get to come out of the cocoons to live as adults. So do I really need to wear this? We're talking about thousands of silkworms being killed for one sari. I was like, it is not needed. There are so many other pretty things which could be artificial silk or there's ahimsa silk. As long as I get to wear a nice sari, I was happy with it. So when my sister got married, my mom was like, you know what? I will look at the positive side of this. You are going to be a less expensive item to work with. I was like, I just need one sari. I will go and choose and I will color code with my sisters and doesn't have to be silk. So it was less expensive. I was a happy person. My family were all happy with it. And the photos looked great.
Let me give you a little more information here, just in case you don't know. Silk weaving goes back all the way to the Harappan civilization, so 2,000 years approximately before Christ. But in Kanchipuram, silk weaving began with the Pallava dynasty between 4th and 9th century. It really flourished, though, in the 16th century when techniques like zari were introduced. Kanjivaram saris have motifs inspired from the temples, so chakras, peacocks, dancing girls, lotuses, and temple silhouettes. But it's their colors that make them truly striking. Vivid primary colors with contrasting borders. So imagine purple paired with yellow, pink with green. Now begin to imagine these variations holding a sparkle of silver or a thick thread of gold, and you begin to understand the vivid beauty of a patta sari.
I was born in a Jain family, so many Jain brides were already not wearing silk saris for their wedding. So as a family, we did not treat Jainism as a religion. And Jainism itself is, if we look at the older texts, right, like she a set of principles. My parents were always like, this is not a religion, whatever appeals to you, it resonates with you, you can follow. So our altar room is diversity of gods and goddesses, including, Islam scriptures, whatever we find and we want to this is cute, we are curious about it. So Jainism had a set of principles that we had to follow. Of course, one is ahimsa, so we don't hurt any other life forms. So that was very straightforward for our family. That's why we started with food, but we also extended to other animals. And of course, other principles are, don't steal, don't lie. But one of the things that appeal to me a lot is the detachment. As I grow older, not when I was young, but as I grew older, that's something that appeals to me a lot. I think it's somewhat similar to also Buddhism. It's still a journey for me. I'm still going through it. Detachment from some of the materialistic things is something that is very appealing. Yeah. Because when I was in the early teens, I was drawn to many things, right? I want to wear this, I want to buy this and stuff. But as I grew older, I developed my own style. So if you meet me tomorrow, I'll probably wear the same thing. I removed all my materialistic desires, right? So I will have the same I have one set of shoes. I have one bag, one water bottle. Everything is just one. It's just the same thing. So I don't accumulate more than what I need. So that is something I've picked up and, able to practice over time. And it is very difficult in our growing up in a household because Deepavali have to buy one set of clothes. Pongal have to buy birthday. And anyone's wedding, they will also, whether you like it or not, you get a sari, a blouse bit. The blouse bits in every one of our bureaus and make quilts out of it. We all get a 1 meter long blouse bit, usually events that you attend. So it was very difficult not to accumulate materialistic. That's a challenge that I was facing. So when you say no, it was rude. But once they started observing a pattern that you don't want it, I try to communicate to them in a way, you give me flowers, I will wear it now. I will enjoy it, I will wear it. Just don't give me blouse bit and other things. We also started doing other things like you visit homes, you buy onions and tomatoes because you have use for it instead of buying sweets. And so we started doing these kind of practices.
As I edit this, I think about an article I read recently suggesting that Jainism could offer a blueprint for sustainable living. Its core principles, nonviolence, detachment, and respect for all living beings align perfectly. Anbu has a much broader view on this.
I think the sustainability is something that is ingrained in a lot of rural lives already. When I was growing up, I remember that we have the gas stove and we turn it on and there is a pot of water with the rice. But because the heat will come out of the lid of the rice pot, so my mom will put the water with vegetables on top. So the heat goes into the vegetables. So you don't turn on another one and cook the vegetables separately. So he will teach us that this is how you can conserve energy. It's not because we don't have the money to do it, but the planet can only support so much, right? So I think it was ingrained from us from very young. Coexistence that I talk about at work. My mom was doing it in an exemplary way when we were young. So she would tell us that there is always this mandi koranga, which is the alpha male.
In case you missed that, koranga is the word for monkey. And monkeys are a constant part of life in India, even if you live in a big city. Some are mild-mannered, some super aggressive, and they're known to steal food. Once in my house, they opened the fridge, devoured my Chinese takeout leftovers, and closed the lid so neatly that I blamed my roommate for eating my food.
You always watch what the alpha is doing and never upset the alpha. Never challenge the alpha. And when the babies come and cling on to the kitchen grill and try to steal food, she would just leave some ginger slices and put the small plastic cups so the babies can still play with it. There's no food in it. If they did put the ginger in their mouth, they don't like it. So they know that they can only come there to play with the plastic cups and not to steal food. I thought that was brilliant, right? Like here we have to publish advisories and write materials how to coexist. But this woman who has no knowledge of wildlife observes the animals and then picks up something and practices. And it's not just my mom. I think I've observed so many people who live close to nature, right? Like when we wash the rice, we don't throw the rice water. It goes into this big drum outside where the cows will come and drink. And when we were young, we used to buy milk from this guys who bring the cows. And we will always ask whether the calf is with the cow. So the mum is not separated from the calf and the calf is already full before you take the milk. So I felt like these are very specific points that you learn about living with nature respectfully and sustainably. And we don't use like cleaning powder, right? It's ash that we use to scrub our dishes and stuff. So it is a very interesting, eye-opening lifestyle. And my mind and heart kind of craves to go back to it at some point. So sometimes I do want to start planning the retire to that kind of pace of life, more sustainable.
As I edit this, wildfires are raging in the US. It's rained for 3 days straight here in Singapore. What will it take to force us into a simpler, more mindful existence? With this darker frame of mind, I return to Anbu's stories. They shift from the nostalgic glow of a beautiful childhood into the shadows. Darker memories emerge.
I was very close to my dad, and he was like a role model, and he introduced me to amazing things in the world, whether it's politics, art, and a lot of other things. When I hit my teens, that's when you started understanding marriage and stuff like that. I learned about certain habits that my dad had. I started questioning him. He was an addict, and I have seen firsthand how the room of someone who abuses substances looks like. You can tell how things are because you clean them up and you know what this person has gone through. So I'm talking about a room full of just wrappers, food wrappers, and just piles and piles of papers. I think under the influence of the drugs, he starts writing things, calculating things. It's in a different world, right? And every time we see the room like that and we clean them up, bottles of alcohol, empty alcohol bottles. So I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3, right? I'm talking about hundreds. So it takes few bags to clean up the room. So we would put him for rehab. He comes back. He asks for forgiveness. He comes back 2, 3 months later, goes back to the same. So at one point, it got physical because since childhood, we have not been hit once for anything. None of us, my parents, never laid a finger on us. So when it got physically violent, it became a issue that needed to be addressed immediately. I was 16. So both my sisters were studying elsewhere, so they were not living in our house. And my mom was at work at a medical camp, and I had a fever, so I was at home. And my dad was also wasn't home. So I was sleeping. And when I woke up after resting, the whole house was covered in shattered glass pieces. And there was a dog. And I think my dad was under the influence. He was cleaning up and suddenly there was an argument between us. And he started throwing things. There was violence. So without going into the details, the first thing I did was I took the dog, ran out, locked him up inside and called the hospital to say, someone needs to come down, sedate this man, and call my mom. By the time the mom came back, she came with a team and they came and sedated and brought him back. Next day was my 12th standard higher secondary examinations that decides your future. And I was a very good student. I was doing fine academically. And I remember that night when, looking back, I was put at my mom's colleague's place. Somehow I managed to sleep and next day I went to the exam. And I passed with flying colors, could get into medical or engineering anywhere. I had very good scores, but I just felt that it was a symbol of resilience. In the face of all this adversity, I think we could still focus on what needs to be done at that moment and then go back to the crisis to handle it. And I think that came from my mom.
I need to pause here as I edit. It's hard to reconcile this woman, so soft, shyly smiling, with the jagged edges of the story. How is it that she hasn't grown sharp? As you'll see, things had to get worse before they got better.
The next round, when it happened, I was already in university. And that is when my dad came to visit. There was one argument that didn't end well because he was still under the influence when he visited me at the hostel. So he walked out of our lives and we never saw him again.
I need to pause again. They argued, he walked out of their life and she never saw him again. What does it feel like to lose someone without a goodbye? How do you move forward when life denies you closure?
The healing is done, of course, with professional help, but the healing is done. To look back to say that, okay, if something, I were to go back to that stage and witness or respond to what has happened, I think I might still do the same, but be okay with it, not blame yourself for fighting and arguing and things like that, but it is okay. It is very hard. It's never easy. When the thought crosses your mind, it's not easy at all. And for all I know, he might be still alive. It's just that we engaged a PI, we made police reports. We just couldn't locate him. A few months ago, we were on a talk with my sister and we're like, I can't remember Dad's voice. And that was something that was quite deeply affecting because, oh my God, we grew like almost half your life with someone and you can't remember their voice anymore.
I know that feeling, forgetting the voice of a loved one, forgetting what they sound like and feeling so guilty. Remember my mother's wedding photo? Sometimes I find myself wondering if I really remember her face or if I just remember the face from that photograph.
So I try to override anything that may give you that anxiety or the grief or the sadness. I try to override them with positive things because those are still true. So those good feelings are still true. So I try to retain them and remember them better. S.P. Balasubramaniam passed away and my mom did not take it well. And 5 days before she passed, one of my colleagues here passed away. So there was so many things happening during that very tough time at COVID. I think these news did not sit well with her, so something must have internally shifted. She asked us a question on a group video call, and I don't know if I did everything well for you guys. And we, three of us, we spent the next half an hour telling how amazing she was. And the same night she passes away when she couldn't breathe suddenly and had a heart attack.
Anbu's mother passed away during the pandemic. She wasn't sick and didn't have COVID. It was an unexpected and shocking loss. What made it even harder was that Anbu couldn't travel back home or attend the funeral. In her grief, she turned to her sisters for support.
I love these conversations with my sisters because we really talk about everything and anything. And even my brother-in-laws wonder, why do you all talk for 30, 40 minutes every day? We don't know, but something will come up and we will talk about it. And sometimes I will pick up the phone just to talk to my sister about something that is bothering me. And she's there to listen, to support. And I just love that energy that I have with my sisters. And it means a lot.
I love this. A circle of brown women stepping in, adjusting to fill the void, drawing closer and tighter in the face of what was missing. As I edit, I realize I really need to move forward because this isn't just a story of loss. Anbu's story doesn't end here. There's so much more. She lives in Singapore now. How did this new chapter of her life begin? What made her leave India, a country she was so deeply connected to?
So I love a lot of things about where I grew up and where I lived. But there are things that I still, until today, cannot come in terms with. So when I grew up, there's not been a single time where I've taken public transport and not be touched or witnessed someone else being touched. So that stayed in my mind that I was always on alert mode. It's not something that I could just watch. And even if it's not happening to me, it's not something I could watch and walk away and carry on with my day.
Let me pause here to clarify what Anbu means by being touched. She's referring to sexual harassment. On a bus, it could be a man standing too close, sneaking his hand around the side of his seat to touch you, gripping the handlebars too close to your hand, hard and intrusive stares, and more overt acts like groping, touching, and even flashing.
It really affected many days because it could be my birthday, I'm going to this favorite temple, I could take a bus. It just changes the whole day. So that is something I couldn't deal with. I wanted to study something related to policy and I wanted to move away. I didn't want to do that here. I felt like a lot of energy and time was spent on putting that guard up all the time that my inner power or potential was not coming out. And I wanted to be useful to the society. And I felt that at that point when you're so angry, you can't fight when you're angry about something. You can't change it.
Anbu chose Singapore, not just for the renowned program at NUS, though that was a big draw. It was also for amazing South Indian food, the safety, the cleanliness, and the greenery. But there was one thing that stood out the most, something that continues to impress her even today. And as you'll hear from my comment in the background, it left a lasting impression on me too.
I love that you can open the tap and get drinking water. Yes.
And I'm like, yeah.
I appreciate it so much because I come from a place where we had to walk or cycle for a few kilometers to just fetch drinking water. And it's only turned on from 5 to 7 a.m. And luckily, I didn't have to fight with people. There could be disputes at where you're filling up drinking water. And because of our hair, we can't wash hair using groundwater. It will fall. There's a huge hair fall. So we had to save a little bit of that water for washing, rinsing your hair on Friday mornings. So our life revolved around that water's availability. And the government issued water's availability. And when I came here, I was like, great, this is amazing. And this is a story that I always tell when I speak to students and youth, because I think we have that privilege here, but water is a scarce commodity. It's a resource. And I think we all know that water could be one of the big reasons for potential conflicts in the future. We will run out if we continue using at the same rate.
I asked her about her integration into Singapore. Was it hard? How did she fit in?
I was a potato when I was young, right? But as I grew up, I was becoming this sponge. I loved meeting people. I loved talking to them, listening to them. And that is something that I enjoyed the most at NUS. My batchmates were amazing and they were from so many different countries and they were very nice to me. And my faculty professors were very nice as well. Until today, I attend the CNY gatherings at my professor's home. That bond was there and it still continued, year after year. And that has allowed me to localize quite quickly and understand.
Anbu joined the World Toilet Organization, an organization with a noble cause, one critically needed in Asia. It was a respectable role, offering her a 4-digit salary and a real sense of purpose. Yet this wasn't her karma. Her real path was waiting elsewhere, at Acres, and it would take a helpless creature to guide her there.
I found them because of a star tortoise. I saw an Indian star tortoise walking by the poolside, and my mind just went ballistic. What on earth is this Indian star tortoise doing at a pool? I know it's illegal to be exported from India. Only Acres had a 24-hour hotline. And guess what? The Acres staff, who is the founder, was in Chennai, then attending an animal welfare conference. So he was like, I'm in Chennai. I said, okay, I'll keep the tortoise for a couple of days. When you guys return, you can come and rescue. So that's how I met Louis, who in fact is the founder of Acres. And he was very suspicious. He later told me that he was suspicious that I was spinning a story that I found the tortoise. Because I was from Tamilnadu, so he thought I just smuggled and trying to hide the fact and get rid of the tortoise. He told me this later. I found Louis and Acres' value. There was a lot of alignment in terms of values that all animals matter, not just endangered ones. And it immediately aligned with me and I started volunteering. Louis was asking that, why don't you join us full time? We really need help. We want to build a rescue center. The calling was strong that, okay, I will join full time. At that time, it was $500 a month in 2006. And I was earning a good 4-digit salary before. And so my mom and sisters were like, she has gone crazy. No one leaves India and goes to Singapore, studies a master's, and then goes for $500 a month. And when I heard it, at that point, it did not sound odd to me. It's like, I want to do this. I want to be useful. And this sounds a great opportunity. Someone has to do it.
I have to let you know that the $500 a month salary is one of the first things that Anbu worked to change, believing that this is just not a sustainable model. I asked her to explain what ACRES is and what they do.
So ACRES is a local Singaporean charity organization that was founded in 2001 by a group of 6 very passionate Singaporeans. And one of them is Louis, who continued to serve as his CEO for quite a few years, about 19 years. They started ACRES because of an incident where he was a volunteer at the zoo here. And a baby chimp was used as a photo prop. And he spoke up against it. He campaigned until the zoo ended these sessions, and he realized that there were other issues that he wanted to speak up about. So it started speaking up for animal welfare. Then we realized that, hey, there are these animals from the illegal wildlife trade who don't have a place to go. We just keep rescuing and they get being put down at the zoo. So that's why we built the rescue center at Sungai Tengah. And that facility is to serve as a temporary home for animals who are trafficked and kept as illegal pets in Singapore, so they can go back to the wild again. Then we realized that rescuing animals alone is not enough. Education is needed. So we formed the backbone of the organization is to do long-term advocacy work. One is education, other is campaigns. So we look at the root cause of the problem. Are we rescuing many animals from glue traps? Yes, it looks great. You have a before and after photo, but we want to reduce the need for rescue in the long run. So we do campaign on glue trap. Are we rescuing many animals from the illegal wildlife trade? That means we have to end the illegal wildlife trade. So we do crime investigations. We provide policy and legislative recommendations for changes. The other part on rescuing animals. Are we really rescuing animals or are we rescuing people? We realize a lot of times we are rescuing wildlife from people's homes because the people are scared of the animals. The animals were not in distress or needing rescue. So we launched a coexistence campaign. So ACRES believes in addressing the root cause so we don't have to continue this work forever. And we have these goals that, in a few decades' time, and the rescue center is still picking up star tortoise after star tortoise, then our crime unit has not done a good job. So we try to keep the indicator on long-lasting impact, the depth in the work, and we focus on where there's massive suffering. So because we can't help every single animal, so we prioritize on projects where we can alleviate massive suffering. Yeah. We also talk about cruelty-free lifestyle. That's where the everyday choices that people can make. So it doesn't look daunting to become an animal advocate. We eat 3 times a day. Maybe once can we save a life. Once a day, go plant-based. The toothpaste, first thing we use in the morning, can we buy a product that's not tested on animals? When we choose our holiday ticket vacation, can we research and find out animal-friendly, community-friendly places? So we give tips for people to make animal-friendly choices that are more easy instead of making it look like, oh, you need to go 100% vegan to help all animals. And it may fail after a while if they are not aware of what to do. And so we are moving away from the narrative of one hero, one story to more advocates and their journeys. So we don't have some of us may have an overnight story that makes an overnight shift or change. Suddenly you're leaving jobs and taking this journey. But we find many people have a journey. It might have been one clip they watched 2 years ago. Then suddenly they're trying some vegan food. Then they're impressed with this. It could be they started dating someone who is an animal lover. Then it opens their minds up. It could be anything, but everyone has a story. So we want to move towards that because every story has the power instead of using one hero, one story.
Singapore is not the worst place for wildlife, right? It's even been mentioned by David Attenborough as an example of coexistence in an urban environment. But do we really practice coexistence? There's a few things I've learned from my visit to Acres that really make me question this. People use glue traps to stop lizards. Pigeons are poisoned. And from my experience, I know that stray dogs in Singapore seem to be petrified of humans. Surely we can do better, but mindsets are so hard to change. I asked Anbu for some advice on how to begin this journey.
We might be jumping to coexisting in our city in nature. There's another C before it, which is the connection with our environment. It can be quite challenging for many of us who have a very fast-paced life to hear that, take a moment to connect with nature. They probably don't have the time. And that is one personal appeal for me, for individuals, is to actually make that time. We have to make that time. Even computers, sometimes when they don't work, your technician asks you to turn it off and turn it on. It works then. So I think we need that. We need to create the reset time. If not daily, it has to be weekly at least. That allows us to connect back with nature in a different way. It doesn't have to be, I have to go to a nature reserve and watch some endangered species of birds. No, it could be in your own neighborhood park. Could be at a coffee shop, observe two pigeons quarreling or, grooming each other. Could be a void deck cat. Just sit and observe what the animal is doing. I think it allows you to slow down a little bit. It even helps with mental health. This I'm speaking from experience. It slows your mind down a little bit, and it's needed at this time and age. Yeah.
But mindsets are hard to change, right? I asked Anbu for some advice on how to begin this journey.
Suffering is universal. Pain and suffering is universal. If we have a hamster and you can't relate to a rat or who's put on a glue trap, if you think the hamster will suffer on a glue trap, the rat is going to suffer on a glue trap. If we love our pet parrot, the chicken who lives the whole life in an A4 size paper to lay eggs in a farm suffers the same. We just need to take off our lenses that we wear, right? I think that being open will allow us to embrace compassion better instead of saying, no, Anbu is asking me to go vegan. Why should I listen to Anbu? I think listen to yourself. I think that will lead to a journey that can be very rewarding because it's not just animals, right? Now, when you shop online, I don't even know what I'm buying. Who made this? Was there a child involved? Was someone paid very little? So I think the journey of compassion, whether it starts with animals, environment, or people, it will never stop there. You will grow to showing compassion to other elements around us.
I love that thought, the journey of compassion. I think about my visit to Acres, the beauty of the place, the joy of watching Anbu interact with the animals and birds. And I ask her to share more. What does her morning routine look like?
So I wake up at 5:30 every day, and the chickens wake up around the same time. They are not down yet because the sun is not out, but you can start hearing them. Oh, the koals. The ooh starts early in the morning. So there are so many birds there, which is fantastic. But between that 5:30 to 9, I also allocate some time for my own reflection and yoga practice. And that is when the chickens will come in. So there is a little conference that happens outside my room. I think because they see me every day, they are very comfortable with my presence. And when I'm practicing or having my coffee, they're just there. And then around 7:45, I will have my call with my sisters. So whenever I am speaking, the chickens would crow in the background. They think probably I'm speaking to them or they have something to say. So this is like a routine, right? Every day this happens. And then by 9:30, officially the work starts and the animal care team will have the tortoises and turtles to feed, the iguanas to feed. So the volunteers will be chopping the food, preparing for these animals, feeding them. They also note down the behavior, who ate, who pooped, who didn't. Everything gets reported. I mean, our group chats are usually just animal poop pictures.
Anbu's role involves so many different aspects: managing education programs, outreach efforts, meetings with government agencies and corporate partners. but most importantly, raising funds through public donations, corporate talks, school visits, and foundation grants. Amazingly, the majority of their funding comes from public generosity. Links are in the notes if you wish to donate or volunteer or both. And how can we help otherwise? What should we do if we encounter an animal in need?
So we have different kinds of animals in the community. If it's a community cat, a dog on the street who is unwell, or any pet animals, companion animals, people can call SPCA for advice. SPCA also runs a 24-hour hotline. For wild animals, we're talking about snakes, monitor lizards, bats, civets, pangolins, monkeys, walrus. You can call ACRES, our hotline. But if you see a baby animal who is not injured, but just on the grass patch and stuff, I really understand why people want to take home and rescue, because it's like a good intention, right? But it's not really good for the babies because the parents are usually around and they will pick them up. So if you're unsure, just take a photo, WhatsApp us, our hotline. WhatsApp our hotline, we will still get back to you. Just don't remove them and bring home. Yeah. Also, another thing is when we see wild animals in the environment and you encounter them when you're going for a nature walk or something, a lot of us may not know what's the etiquette to follow, but all this precious information is actually on this one single website called ourwildneighbors.sg. It's a joint effort between ACRES and PARK, Mandai Nature and other nature groups. So we thought, hey, why should we confuse public with different kind of advisories? We plonked everything into one central resource. It's easy for people to have one-stop website to go and refer to information. So it has information on what are the commonly cited snakes. There are even advisories you can print and put on your notice board. It could be your workplace notice board. You can print it out and put it up so your own colleagues can also be, made aware. Just look up the information instead of acting on fear. We understand when people are fearful of snakes and stuff, but it's okay. We don't have to act on fear because usually we do the wrong thing when we are fearful of something. And same thing goes with helping animals in general. Just take your first step. After that, the next steps will come on its own. And like I mentioned, treat it as a journey of compassion.
I once found a baby owl on a bike path, just a ball of feathers with big round eyes. I called ACRES and they suggested I bring it home since it might get run over by the bikers on the path. I still remember that little beak, those round eyes peeking out of the raincoat I used as a makeshift nest. It turns out that his siblings were rescued as well, and that night, the rescue team returned to the same spot. They waited for an adult owl to appear and left the babies there for the adults to take care of the rest. Anbu's role at ACRES is so impressive. To go from a volunteer to be the co-CEO of the foundation, I'm in complete awe of what she's managed to achieve. I ask her what her dreams are for the future of ACRES.
My dream for ACRES is to be a credible source of information for animal welfare, and our team to be able to level up equally to be a voice for the animals and create change that has depth and long-lasting impact. That is something that we look for. So it's not about one snake, a big dramatic case today. So it doesn't stop there, but we look at what is a messaging that will last longer, whether it is policy level change, legislative change, or general awareness as well. So that is the dream for us. So hopefully we all can retire at some point. Personally, my retirement dream plan is to set up idli kada. So just enough to earn enough to survive, but fresh food, no refrigerators in my eatery. It will be plant-based, fresh food, cheap, affordable. I like feeding people. I like cooking. I enjoy cooking. So hopefully one day.
It sounds like the perfect retirement plan if you ask me. Although I might ask her to include that Nellikai pickle on the menu as well. As we near the end of this interview, I want to leave her with one final question, one that feels fitting given everything we've learned about her. I ask Anbu what animals have taught her.
The biggest lesson I learned was about pausing. Just this morning before I came, there was a tree trunk and there was this garden. He was shining so beautifully. I know it's a he. Was shining so beautifully under the sunlight, just basking. The eyes were closed. So I had to walk very, softly and walk away. It's how animals live their lives so in a wholesome way. And sometimes we always ask, like, what is all this about, right? Or what are we running towards? And when I observe animals in the wild doing their thing, whatever their thing is, it just allows me to press the pause, ground yourself, and then come back with the clearer mind. And I think everyone should also try and experience it. It's quite amazing.
This is a beautiful place to end. And as I finish, I think of my dog, who sits at my feet as I edit, staring out the window and watching the world go by. I think of the calm I feel when I snuggle my feet under his belly and feel his body move with his breath. And I have to agree with Anbu. Pause. Be still. Be quiet. Anbu's life is a testament to the power of quiet determination. From a small-town girl called Potato to a fierce protector of animals, Anbu has redefined what it means to speak up, not with volume, but with action. Her journey reminds me of the importance of pausing, grounding ourselves in the present, and finding clarity in the quiet moments. Whether it's watching a lizard bask in the sun or sipping coffee with a friend, these pauses are where we reconnect with nature, with our community, with ourselves, and with our purpose. Thank you for listening. I hope Anbu's story and the lessons she's shared inspire you as much as they've inspired me. And if you want to support Acres or learn more, all the details are in the show notes. And with that, I hope you'll join me next time on The Brown Box. Until then, remember, small acts of compassion can ripple outwards in the most extraordinary ways.